What if I told you that every single night while you sleep, your body is performing miracles that most modern medicine can't explain, yet you're actively preventing these miracles from happening without even realizing it? Think about it for a moment. You lie down exhausted. You close your eyes for what should be 8 hours of restoration, and yet you wake up feeling just as tired, foggy, and depleted as when you went to bed. Has this ever happened to you? You're not alone, and more importantly, this isn't normal. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's something that Joel Goldsmith understood decades ago. Something that modern science is only now beginning to catch up with. Sleep isn't just a time when your brain shuts down and your body rests. No, something far more profound is happening. During those hours of darkness, while your conscious mind drifts away, your physical body is supposed to reconnect with what Goldsmith called divine healing energies. These aren't abstract spiritual concepts. We're talking about actual tangible processes that repair cellular damage, regenerate tissue, fight off disease, and restore the delicate balance of every system in your body. But here's where it gets shocking. Most people are blocking this natural healing process every single night. They're creating barriers between their physical body and the spiritual source of regeneration that wants to flow through them. And the consequences? They're walking around with chronic illness, premature aging, mental fog, and a deep sense of spiritual disconnection, wondering why nothing seems to help, why they can't seem to get better no matter what they try. Goldsmith taught that your body is a self-healing temple, designed with extraordinary regenerative capacity built right into your DNA. Every cell knows how to repair itself. Every organ knows how to detoxify and restore. This wisdom is hardwired into your very existence. But modern life has erected walls around this temple. We've filled our nights with habits, thoughts, and environments that actively sever the connection between our physical form and the divine power that seeks to heal us. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the answer isn't found in another supplement, another medical intervention, or another expensive treatment. The answer lies in understanding what's happening in those 8 hours you spend unconscious each night. Every single evening, you face a choice, though you probably don't realize you're making it. Your body is either moving toward vibrant health and restoration, or it's accelerating toward deterioration and disease. And this choice isn't determined by your genetics, your age, or even your current health condition. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what Goldsmith revealed about the relationship between sleep, spiritual alignment, and physical healing has the power to transform not just how you sleep, but how you heal, how you age, and how you experience life itself. The simple changes we're about to explore could unlock healing miracles that your body is desperately trying to perform right now, tonight, if only you would stop blocking them. So let me ask you again, what's really happening during those 8 hours of sleep? Think about what's actually happening right now in millions of bedrooms across the world. People are lying down, closing their eyes, and entering what Joel Goldsmith described as the body's communion with the infinite. This isn't poetic language meant to sound spiritual. This is the hidden truth about what sleep really is. When your conscious mind finally releases its grip and drifts into dreams, your physical form doesn't just power down like a computer going into rest mode. Something far more extraordinary begins to unfold. During those dark, quiet hours, while you're completely unaware, your body is having a conversation with forces beyond your conscious understanding. It's rebuilding damaged cells. It's repairing tissues worn down by the day's activities. It's purging toxins that have accumulated in your blood, your organs, your very tissues. Your immune system is waging war against invading pathogens and abnormal cells that could become disease. Your chemistry is rebalancing itself, hormones are being secreted, neural pathways are being strengthened or pruned. This is the presence of healing, not the absence of waking. This is your body's journey back to wholeness, a journey it makes every single night if you allow it. But here's the revelation that changes everything, the part that most people never grasp. This healing doesn't happen automatically. Goldsmith was emphatic about this point. You can't just close your eyes and expect miracles to occur. The transformation that should happen during sleep depends entirely on the conditions you've created. Are you opening the channels for divine healing energy to flow through every cell, or are you blocking that flow with decisions you don't even realize you're making? If this kind of deep, transformative content speaks to you, make sure you subscribe to this channel. This is where we explore the spiritual truths that actually make a difference in your life, and I don't want you to miss what's coming next. Most of us are blocking it. We're making choices throughout our day, especially in those critical hours before sleep, that create barriers between our physical body and the source of all healing. We're carrying toxic mental states into our beds. We're surrounding ourselves with environments that interfere with natural restoration. We're holding on to emotions that turn our internal chemistry acidic and inflammatory. And then we wonder why we're not healing, why we're aging faster than we should, why chronic conditions persist, no matter what treatments we try. The impact of this disconnection is profound. Every night that you block the healing process is a night your body doesn't get to complete its restorative work. The damage accumulates, the toxins build up, the inflammation spreads, the decline accelerates, and you wake up feeling the evidence of that blockage in your fatigue, your pain, your mental fog, your sense that something fundamental isn't working right. Your body is trying to tell you something. It's trying to show you that the connection has been severed. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding what blocks healing is just the beginning. What matters is recognizing the specific patterns in your own life, the habits you've developed without questioning them, the mindset you bring to sleep itself. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to understand," if this is resonating with you, because what comes next reveals exactly how these blocks manifest in your daily routine and what you can do about them tonight. Let me show you what's really happening in that moment when you drift from waking to sleeping. There's a transfer of power taking place, a shift so profound that most people never stop to consider its significance. Your conscious mind, the part of you that's been controlling, planning, worrying, and managing everything all day long, finally loosens its grip. It steps back, and in that space, something extraordinary moves in to take its place. Your subconscious mind, which Goldsmith understood to be directly connected to universal consciousness, to infinite intelligence, to what many call God, assumes control of your physical body. This isn't just a change in brainwave patterns. This is your personal consciousness making contact with something vastly greater than itself. And during this transfer, healing energies that flow through all of creation, the same force that makes plants grow and wounds close and broken bones knit back together, can finally enter your body without the interference of your conscious mind's doubts, fears, and resistance. This is when the real work begins. Your cells, now operating under the guidance of infinite intelligence rather than your limited conscious awareness, start their repair protocols. Your immune system, freed from the suppression of stress hormones, launches into battle against infections you didn't even know you had. Your organs begin their deep detoxification processes, filtering out the accumulated poisons from your blood and tissues. Your nervous system, which has been firing in fight or flight mode all day, finally resets itself. Your glands release the healing hormones that only come during deep rest. This is the behind-the-scenes miracle that should be happening every single night. But here's the revelation that transforms everything: the quality of this. Healing, the depth of this restoration, depends entirely on your spiritual alignment in those final moments before sleep. Goldsmith was absolutely clear about this. If you carry anger into your bed, if your last thoughts are replaying arguments or rehearsing resentments, you're creating vibrational blocks that prevent healing energy from flowing properly. If you're consumed with worry about tomorrow, if fear is running through your mind as you close your eyes, if you're mentally attacking yourself with criticism and self-judgment, you're essentially closing the door on the very forces that want to heal you. Your mental state and your spiritual state aren't separate from your physical healing. They're the gateway to it. Those final thoughts before sleep, the emotional frequency you're vibrating at when consciousness transfers from your mind to the infinite, these set the tone for everything that happens in your body over the next 8 hours. It's like tuning a radio. If you're tuned to the frequency of peace, gratitude, and spiritual trust, healing flows in clearly and powerfully. If you're tuned to anger, fear, and resistance, the signal gets blocked, distorted, interrupted. This is why two people can sleep the same number of hours and wake up in completely different states. One feels restored because they created the conditions for healing. The other feels depleted because they blocked the process with their mindset. The impact of this understanding on your health journey cannot be overstated because it means you have far more control than you realize. Put down, "I choose healing," if you're starting to see how your thoughts before sleep might be affecting your restoration. So what's the practical solution to creating this spiritual alignment before sleep? Goldsmith gave very specific guidance on this, and it might surprise you because he wasn't talking about religious obligation or complicated rituals. He was talking about prayer and gratitude as a healing protocol, as deliberate as taking medicine but infinitely more powerful. This is a decision you make, a conscious choice to end your day differently than you've been ending it. When you take just a few minutes before sleep to align your consciousness with divine love and peace, when you express genuine gratitude for the blessings in your life, when you pray not from desperation but from trust, you're doing something very specific on an energetic level. You're opening a channel. You're creating a clear pathway for healing energy to flow through every cell in your body throughout the entire night. This isn't about being good or spiritual enough. This is about understanding how the system works and using it correctly. Think of it like preparing soil before planting seeds. You wouldn't throw seeds on hard, rocky ground and expect a harvest. You prepare the soil first. Prayer and gratitude before sleep are how you prepare your body and consciousness to receive the healing that wants to flow to you. Without this preparation, you're trying to heal on hard ground. The transformation can't take root. And here's what makes this even more compelling. Modern science is now proving what Goldsmith taught decades ago. Researchers have discovered that during deep sleep, your brain activates a cleansing system that flushes out toxic proteins, the same proteins that accumulate and cause Alzheimer's disease. During REM sleep, your mind processes the emotional experiences of the day and consolidates important memories, essentially performing psychological healing while you're unconscious. During the deepest stages of sleep, your pituitary gland releases growth hormone that floods through your system, repairing damaged tissues and building new cellular structures. Your immune system becomes incredibly active during sleep, releasing specialized proteins called cytokines that fight inflammation and coordinate your body's defense against disease. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure decreases, giving your cardiovascular system the recovery time it desperately needs. Every single system in your body shifts into healing mode. The science is clear and measurable. But what science is only beginning to understand is what Goldsmith knew all along. This physical healing process is intimately connected to your spiritual state. The data shows that people who practice gratitude and prayer before sleep experience deeper sleep cycles, more consistent healing hormone, release, and better immune function. The mind-body connection isn't metaphorical, it's biological reality with spiritual roots. Your thoughts, your emotions, your spiritual alignment, these don't just affect how you feel. They directly influence the chemical cascades, the neural patterns, and the cellular processes that determine whether your body heals or deteriorates during sleep. Now, understanding this connection opens up a completely different approach to health, one that puts the power back in your hands rather than leaving you dependent on external interventions. Write in the comments, "I see the connection," if you're beginning to grasp how your spiritual practices directly impact your physical restoration. Let me share something that might make you uncomfortable because it directly challenges habits most people follow without question. Every night, millions of people eat heavy meals right before bed, thinking it doesn't matter as long as they're getting their sleep hours. But here's the hidden truth about what's actually happening inside your body when you do this. When you eat processed foods, heavy proteins, or large meals close to bedtime, you're forcing your body to make a critical decision: digest this food or heal damaged cells. It cannot do both simultaneously. Your stomach has to churn and break down that food. Your liver has to work overtime processing fats and filtering toxins from your bloodstream. Your pancreas struggles to manage the blood sugar spike. All of this requires enormous amounts of energy, the same energy that should be redirected to cellular repair, immune function, and tissue regeneration. So while you're lying there thinking you're resting, your body is actually in a state of metabolic stress, postponing the healing work that can only happen when digestion isn't competing for resources. Goldsmith understood this principle deeply. He recommended light, easily digestible foods in the evening precisely because he knew the body needs to complete its digestive work before it can shift into full healing mode. This isn't about restriction or deprivation. This is about timing and strategy. Your body wants to heal you, but you have to stop giving it conflicting instructions. You have to stop forcing it to choose between processing food and repairing damage. If this video opened your eyes to something new about healing and sleep, show me by hitting that like button. It's a simple gesture that tells me this content is reaching the people who need it most. Now, beyond what you're putting into your body, there's another layer of interference that most people never consider: the environment you're sleeping in. Goldsmith emphasized that your sleeping space profoundly affects your healing capacity. He spoke about the absolute necessity of fresh air circulation, of well-ventilated rooms, because your body requires oxygen to perform cellular repair. When you're breathing stale, oxygen-depleted air all night, you're starving your cells of the fuel they need for regeneration. But the environmental impact goes even deeper than air quality. Goldsmith had insights about artificial energies interfering with the body's natural healing frequencies long before our modern world became saturated with electromagnetic radiation. Think about your bedroom right now. Is your phone on your nightstand, just inches from your head? Are you surrounded by Wi-Fi routers, smart devices, electronic alarm clocks, all emitting electromagnetic frequencies throughout the night? You might not feel these energies, but your cells are responding to them. These artificial frequencies create a kind of static interference with your body's own electromagnetic field, the subtle energy patterns that coordinate healing processes at the cellular level. It's like trying to have a quiet conversation in a room full of loud machinery. The healing signals your body is trying to send and receive get disrupted, distorted, overwhelmed by the electronic noise surrounding you. The transformation you're seeking might be blocked not by lack of willpower or bad genetics, but by the environment you've unknowingly created. This revelation changes the entire approach to sleep and healing because it means you have concrete, actionable decisions you can make tonight that will immediately impact your body's ability to restore itself. Put down, environment matters. If you're realizing how your sleeping space might be affecting your healing journey, but there's something even more insidious blocking your healing, something you carry with you every single night without realizing the damage it's causing. I'm talking about the mental and emotional toxicity you take to bed with you. Goldsmith revealed something that modern psychoneuroimmunology is now confirming. When you hold on to anger, fear, resentment, or anxiety, you're not just experiencing negative emotions. You're creating actual chemical changes in your body that acidify your entire system and block the flow of healing energy. When you lie down angry at someone, replaying the argument in your mind, nursing your grievances and resentments, your body doesn't register that as mere thought. Your body experiences it as a threat and responds by flooding your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline. Instead of marinating in healing hormones like growth hormone and melatonin, you're bathing every cell in stress chemicals designed for survival, not restoration. Your immune system gets suppressed. Your digestive system shuts down. Your cellular repair mechanisms go offline, all because you're holding on to emotional poison. The same thing happens when you carry worry into sleep. When your last thoughts are anxious rehearsals of tomorrow's problems or fearful projections about what might go wrong, you activate your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response that's designed to help you escape danger. But this response is incompatible with healing. Your body literally cannot heal and defend at the same time. It must choose one, and when you're lying there consumed with anxiety, you're forcing it to choose defense over restoration every single time. This is the brutal truth behind why so many people don't heal despite getting adequate sleep hours. The transformation they're seeking is blocked not by time in bed, but by the mindset they bring to bed. You can sleep for 10 hours, but if those 10 hours are spent in a state of emotional toxicity, your body will wake up more damaged than when it lay down. Now, even if you manage to clear your mind and release your emotional burdens, there's another critical factor that determines whether healing actually occurs. Goldsmith was insistent about this. You must sleep during the natural dark hours. This isn't arbitrary preference. Your body operates on ancient rhythms that have been hardwired into your biology over millions of years of evolution. These circadian rhythms are tied directly to the movement of the sun. When you stay awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, scrolling through your phone or binge-watching shows, you're not just being undisciplined. You're creating internal chaos at the cellular level. Your hormones are released on precise schedules. Your organs perform specific detoxification and repair functions at specific times. Your immune system follows predictable patterns tied to day and night cycles. When you fight against these natural rhythms, when you try to convince your body that 3 a.m. is the new bedtime, you disrupt the entire orchestration of healing that should be happening. The impact of this misalignment compounds over time. It's not just one night of poor healing. It's years of accumulated damage, because your body never gets the synchronized restoration it was designed to receive. Write in the comments, alignment is everything, if you're recognizing how your schedule might be sabotaging your healing journey. There's something most people never consider, a detail so simple it seems almost trivial, yet Goldsmith understood its profound impact on healing. I'm talking about the physical position you sleep in. You probably just flop into bed, however feels comfortable in the moment. But that unconscious decision is affecting every organ system in your body throughout the night. Goldsmith frequently recommended sleeping on your right side, and the reasoning behind this reveals just how precisely designed your body's healing mechanisms actually are. When you sleep on your right side, you enhance blood circulation in ways that optimize organ function. Your liver, which is your primary detoxification organ and works its hardest during sleep hours, operates most efficiently in this position. The liver is responsible for filtering toxins from your blood, breaking down hormones, processing fats, and performing hundreds of chemical reactions essential to healing. When you sleep on your right side, you facilitate this entire detoxification process because gravity and anatomy work together to support optimal liver function. Contrast this with sleeping on your stomach, which compresses your organs, restricts your breathing, and prevents the deep, restorative sleep your body needs for healing. Or consider that many people sleep in whatever position feels momentarily comfortable without realizing they're creating physical barriers to the restoration their body is trying to perform. This isn't about perfection. This is about making informed decisions that support your healing journey rather than inadvertently sabotaging it. Now, beyond the physical positioning of your body, there's a spiritual preparation that Goldsmith taught as essential for optimal healing. Prayer and meditation before sleep aren't just practices that calm your anxious mind, though they certainly do that. They literally prepare your body at a cellular level to receive healing energy. When you take those final moments before sleep to consciously invite healing, when you surrender your body to divine care rather than trying to control everything, when you release the burdens and struggles of the day and place your trust in spiritual restoration, you're creating the optimal internal conditions for miraculous healing to occur. Your intention matters more than most people realize. Your faith, not as blind belief, but as genuine trust in a power greater than yourself, opens channels that skepticism and fear keep closed. Your willingness to surrender control, to stop gripping so tightly to outcomes and worries, allows the divine intelligence that flows through all creation to do its work unimpeded. This is the hidden truth about healing that modern medicine often misses. The transformation happens not just through mechanical processes, but through spiritual alignment. Think about the difference between someone who collapses into bed exhausted, mind still racing with tomorrow's problems, versus someone who takes 5 minutes to pray with genuine gratitude, to consciously release control, to trust that their body and spirit will be restored while they sleep. The second person has prepared the soil for healing. They've opened the door. They've created receptivity. And their body responds to that intention throughout the entire night with deeper healing processes than the exhausted, anxious person could ever access. Put down, "I'm learning to surrender," if this revelation is shifting how you think about your nightly routine. So let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice, because understanding the principles means nothing if you don't implement them. Creating a sleep sanctuary isn't about spending thousands on expensive mattresses or gadgets. It's about making intentional decisions that honor your body as the healing temple it was designed to be. Your bedroom should be genuinely dark, and I mean complete darkness, not the glow of electronics or streetlights filtering through thin curtains. Real darkness triggers melatonin production, the hormone that orchestrates your entire healing cascade during sleep. This means investing in blackout curtains or removing the electronics that emit those constant little lights throughout the night. It means opening a window to ensure fresh air circulation, even if it's just slightly, because stale air means oxygen-depleted air, and your cells cannot repair themselves without adequate oxygen. The temperature matters too. Your body needs to cool down as part of its natural healing process. So keeping your room between 60 and 67 degrees facilitates this biological requirement rather than fighting against it. The hours before sleep require just as much attention as the sleep environment itself. Stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed so your body has completed digestion and can redirect all its energy to restoration. Limit or eliminate alcohol, which might make you drowsy, but prevents the deep sleep stages where real healing occurs. Turn off your screens at least an hour before sleep, preferably 2, and use that time for activities that elevate your consciousness rather than agitate it. Read something spiritually uplifting. Write in a gratitude journal. Do gentle stretching that releases the physical tension your body has been holding all day. Now, here's where everything we've discussed comes together into the most powerful revelation of all. Your body doesn't just heal randomly or mechanically. Your body heals according to the image you hold in your consciousness. If you see yourself as sick, broken, declining, and damaged, your body receives that instruction and works to manifest that image in physical form. If you see yourself as healing, whole, vital, and divinely sustained, your body receives that instruction instead and directs its resources toward manifesting health. During sleep, when your conscious mind finally stops interfering, your subconscious beliefs take over completely. This is why the affirmations and prayers you speak before sleep are so incredibly powerful. They're not just positive thinking exercises. They're programming instructions for your subconscious mind, which then guides every cellular process, every hormonal release, every immune response throughout the night. You're literally telling your body what to build, what to become, what to manifest. Most people have been programming themselves for disease without realizing it. Their last thoughts are worries about their symptoms, fears about getting worse, beliefs that they're powerless victims of circumstance, and their bodies dutifully follow those instructions all night long. But when you shift the image in your consciousness, when you claim your healing with faith and conviction, when you see yourself as already whole in spiritual reality, even if physical manifestation hasn't caught up yet, you give your body completely different marching orders. Write in the comments, "I choose the healing." Image, if you're ready to change what you've been unconsciously programming into your body. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who's serious about understanding the deeper truths behind healing, someone who's not satisfied with surface-level answers. That tells me something important about you. You're on a journey toward genuine transformation, and these insights from Joel Goldsmith's teachings are exactly what you've been searching for, even if you didn't know it until now. I create content like this because I believe this wisdom needs to reach the people who are ready for it, people like you who understand that real healing goes far beyond what conventional approaches offer. If this resonates with you, if you want more of these deep explorations into spiritual truths that can actually change your life, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. This is where we dive into the teachings that matter, the ones that give you practical tools for real transformation. And do me a favor, leave a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me, so I know you were here, so I know this content is reaching the right people." Your engagement helps this message spread to others who need it just as much as you did. And if you found value in what we explored today, hit that like button. It helps more than you might think. Now there's another video right here that goes even deeper into how your thoughts shape your physical reality. It's a natural continuation of what we've been discussing, and I think you'll find it just as eye-opening. Click and continue with me over there. I'll see you in the next one.
There's a spiritual practice Joel Goldsmith taught that made religious institutions so uncomfortable. Some denominational leaders actually warned their congregations against it. Not because it was dangerous, but because it worked without needing their permission, their buildings, or their approval. This practice gave ordinary people direct access to healing power. What terrified these institutions wasn't the technique itself. It was that people began experiencing genuine transformation without intermediaries, without rituals, without the structures that kept them dependent. Joel called this practice impersonalization, and it dissolved problems that years of traditional prayer couldn't touch. The controversy started in the 1950s when Joel's students began sharing remarkable healing experiences. Physical conditions improved, relationships transformed, financial struggles resolved, all through a practice that required nothing external. just a shift in how you perceive the person or situation before you. Impersonalization means recognizing that what appears as a problem in another person isn't actually them. It's an impersonal belief operating through them, a universal suggestion that has no real power or presence. You stop fighting the person and start seeing through the illusion that has temporarily attached itself to their human appearance. When Amanda looked at her aggressive colleague Brian, she stopped seeing him as the problem. She began recognizing that aggression itself was an impersonal force, a belief in separation and fear that could operate through anyone. Brian wasn't inherently aggressive. He was temporarily expressing an impersonal pattern that had no spiritual reality or legitimate existence. This recognition didn't require Amanda to confront Brian, pray for him in traditional ways, or try to change him through mental effort. She simply held the awareness that the spiritual identity of Brian remained untouched by this temporary human expression. The impersonal nature of the problem meant it had no real attachment to him as an individual being. The practice works because consciousness creates experience. When you impersonalize, you stop feeding the false appearance with your belief that it's real and permanent. You withdraw your mental agreement that this person is the problem, recognizing instead that they're experiencing a temporary suggestion that has no power except what human belief gives it through sustained attention. Joel discovered this principle through years of spiritual practice and mystical insight. He found that when you stop personalizing problems, they lose their grip on your experience. The person you were struggling with suddenly changes, not because you tried to change them, but because you changed your perception of what was actually happening in consciousness. Religious authorities resisted this teaching because it bypassed their entire system. You didn't need absolution, rituals, or someone else's prayers. You needed clear spiritual vision that recognized the impersonal nature of all discord, disease, and dysfunction. This vision was available to anyone willing to practice it consistently over time, with patience and dedication. Here's how the practice unfolds in daily life. When someone criticizes you harshly, your first impulse is to defend yourself or attack back. But impersonalization asks you to pause and recognize that criticism itself is an impersonal suggestion of inadequacy or judgment-seeking expression through this person. They're not the source, they're the temporary channel for something impersonal. This recognition doesn't make you passive or weak. It makes you spiritually intelligent. You respond to the situation appropriately while maintaining inner awareness that the spiritual identity of this person remains perfect and untouched. The human behavior is temporary. The spiritual reality is permanent and unchanging despite appearances. Within days or weeks of practicing this consistently, you'll notice the relationship shifts. The person becomes less aggressive, less critical, or circumstances naturally separate you, not through manipulation or mental force, but through the natural outworking of consciousness recognizing truth. The impersonal pattern simply loses its power to operate through that individual in your presence and experience. Daniel was a hospital administrator dealing with a board member named Nicole who opposed every initiative he proposed. For 6 months, meetings became battlegrounds. Daniel tried diplomacy, tried avoiding her, tried building alliances against her. Nothing worked. Nicole seemed personally committed to blocking his vision for patient care improvements. Then Daniel encountered Joel Goldsmith's impersonalization practice through a friend's recommendation. The concept seemed too simple to work against such persistent opposition, but Daniel was desperate enough to try anything. He began practicing during his morning meditation, recognizing that Nicole's opposition wasn't personal, but an impersonal belief in limitation and control-seeking expression. For 3 weeks, Daniel practiced this recognition daily. He didn't change his proposals or his approach to board meetings. He simply maintained the inner awareness that Nicole's spiritual identity remained perfect, untouched by the impersonal pattern of resistance operating through her human behavior. He stopped seeing her as the enemy and started seeing through the impersonal nature of opposition itself. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a routine budget meeting. Nicole suddenly supported one of Daniel's proposals, offering constructive modifications rather than automatic rejection. Other board members looked surprised. Daniel maintained his inner practice, recognizing this shift as the natural result of consciousness responding to truth rather than personal manipulation. Over the following 2 months, Nicole became one of Daniel's strongest allies. She never acknowledged the shift, never apologized for past opposition. The change happened organically as the impersonal pattern lost its power to operate through her in Daniel's experience. The hospital implemented patient care improvements that benefited thousands. Joel taught that this is how impersonalization works in the real world, not through dramatic confrontations or overnight miracles, but through gradual shifts in consciousness that naturally produce changes in experience. The timeline varies. Some situations shift quickly, others require weeks or months of consistent practice before visible results emerge in your daily life. Kevin struggled with chronic lower back pain that doctors couldn't fully explain. Physical therapy helped temporarily, but the pain always returned. His physician suggested the problem might have stress components, but traditional stress management techniques provided minimal relief. Kevin was considering surgery despite the uncertain prognosis and significant recovery time. A friend introduced Kevin to Joel Goldsmith's teachings on impersonalizing disease. The concept challenged everything Kevin believed about physical healing. How could recognizing pain as impersonal change a physical condition? Yet pharmaceutical options were exhausted, and Kevin was willing to explore alternatives before committing to surgery with questionable outcomes. Kevin began practicing daily. Instead of fighting the pain or identifying himself as a chronic pain sufferer, he recognized that pain itself was an impersonal suggestion of separation from wholeness. The pain wasn't him, wasn't his identity, wasn't his permanent reality. It was a temporary impersonal pattern passing through his experience. After 6 weeks of consistent practice, Kevin noticed the pain intensity decreasing. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually and steadily. By 3 months, he functioned normally most days. His physician was surprised but attributed it to delayed response from previous physical therapy. Kevin knew differently. He had changed his consciousness about pain itself. The practice didn't replace medical care. Kevin continued appropriate physical activity and professional consultation. But impersonalization added a spiritual dimension that addressed the consciousness component of physical experience. Kevin learned that many conditions have both physical and consciousness elements, and addressing consciousness can support overall healing in ways purely physical treatments sometimes cannot. If these transformation stories inspire you, like this video to help others discover Joel Goldsmith's forbidden practice. Subscribe for more mystical Christianity wisdom that denominations tried to suppress, and comment which story resonated most with your current situation. Beyond impersonalization, Joel taught a complementary practice called recognition. While impersonalization removes false beliefs about others, recognition establishes spiritual truth about their real identity. Together, these practices create a complete approach to consciousness transformation that addresses both the removal of error and the establishment of truth simultaneously. Recognition means consciously acknowledging the spiritual perfection already present. When you look at someone struggling with addiction, disease, or dysfunction, recognition sees past the human appearance to the divine consciousness that constitutes their actual being. This isn't positive thinking or denial. It's spiritual vision that perceives what's eternally true despite temporary appearances. Jonathan practiced recognition with his sister Ashley, who struggled with severe anxiety. Instead of focusing on her symptoms or trying to fix her mentally, Jonathan held recognition of her spiritual completeness. He didn't announce this practice to her or make it obvious. He simply maintained the inner awareness during their conversations and family interactions. The recognition practice doesn't require the other person's cooperation or awareness. You're not sending them thoughts or trying to influence them mentally. You're simply aligning your consciousness with spiritual truth about their identity. This alignment naturally affects the field of consciousness you share, creating space for their healing without any manipulation or mental force directed at them. Ashley began improving over several months. Her anxiety attacks decreased in frequency and intensity. She attributed the improvement to therapy and medication adjustments, and Jonathan never corrected her. The important thing wasn't who received credit, but that Ashley's quality of life improved as Jonathan maintained recognition of her spiritual perfection consistently. Joel emphasized that recognition works alongside traditional care, not as a replacement. Ashley's therapy provided practical tools, her medication supported brain chemistry, and Jonathan's recognition addressed the consciousness dimension. All three contributed to her overall healing process. Spiritual practice complements professional care rather than competing with it in most situations. Another complementary technique Joel taught was meditation on spiritual identity. This differs from traditional meditation that seeks peace or clarity. This meditation establishes conscious awareness of your own divine nature, which then radiates into your experience naturally. You're not trying to change your circumstances. You're recognizing the consciousness that creates circumstances. Michelle spent 20 minutes each morning in this meditation. She didn't ask for anything, didn't visualize outcomes, didn't repeat affirmations. She simply rested in awareness of consciousness itself as her true identity. The infinite, eternal, perfect consciousness that Joel called the Christ within. The presence of God as individual being and awareness. This practice seemed passive, but Michelle discovered its power through consistent application over months. Her business challenges resolved not through her efforting but through opportunities and connections that emerged naturally. Her health improved without dramatic interventions. Her relationships deepened as she stopped trying to control them and simply maintained awareness of spiritual perfection. The meditation practice supports both impersonalization and recognition by establishing your own consciousness in truth. When you're anchored in awareness of your spiritual identity, impersonalizing others becomes natural. You automatically see through false appearances because you're not caught in them yourself. Recognition flows easily because you're conscious of the divine nature you're recognizing in everyone. Richard combined all three practices into his daily spiritual routine. Morning meditation established his consciousness in truth. Throughout the day, he impersonalized challenges and recognized spiritual perfection in others. This comprehensive approach created a consciousness that naturally manifested harmony, health, and wholeness. Not instantly, not magically, but progressively over weeks and months of consistent practice. Joel taught that spiritual development is gradual. You don't master these practices overnight. Some days are easier than others. Some situations respond quickly. Others require persistent practice over extended periods. The key is consistency, returning to the practice daily regardless of immediate visible results. Consciousness transformation precedes experience transformation, sometimes by weeks or months before you see the evidence. The most common challenge with impersonalization is the temptation to make it a mental technique to manipulate others. You practice impersonalization, hoping the difficult person will change or leave your life. This motivation corrupts the practice because you're still personalizing the problem, just using a spiritual technique to try to control it mentally. Brandon struggled with this for months. He practiced impersonalization toward his manager, Anthony, hoping Anthony would quit or transfer. When nothing changed after several weeks, Brandon felt the practice failed. He didn't realize his motivation was still rooted in personal manipulation, rather than genuine spiritual recognition of truth regardless of outcomes. A Joel Goldsmith teacher helped Brandon understand the subtle difference. Impersonalization isn't about getting what you want through spiritual techniques. It's about seeing truth clearly and letting that truth naturally govern your experience. The outcome might be Anthony changing, or you changing, or the situation resolving through unexpected means. You release attachment to specific results. Another obstacle is inconsistency. You practice impersonalization when you're angry or frustrated, but forget it when things calm down. This sporadic approach produces sporadic results. The impersonal pattern returns because you haven't established consistent consciousness that sees through it permanently. Joel emphasized that consciousness work requires the same consistency as physical exercise for lasting benefits. Samantha discovered this through her practice with a neighbor named Ryan who played loud music late at night. She would impersonalize during conflicts, feel better temporarily, but then slip back into personalizing Ryan as the problem when the music started again. The pattern continued because her practice was reactive rather than proactive and consistent. When Samantha began practicing impersonalization daily regardless of whether Ryan played music that night, the situation transformed. Her consciousness shifted from reactive anger to stable spiritual recognition. Ryan either began using headphones or Samantha stopped being disturbed by the music. The exact mechanism didn't matter because her experience changed through changed consciousness maintained consistently. A third challenge is expecting instant results. You practice for a few days or weeks, and when the situation doesn't immediately change, you conclude the practice doesn't work. But consciousness transformation operates on its own timeline. Some patterns dissolve quickly, others are deeply entrenched and require months of consistent practice before visible shifts emerge. Angela practiced impersonalization toward her adult daughter Catherine, who struggled with addiction. After 2 months with no visible improvement, Angela felt discouraged. A spiritual counselor reminded her that addiction involves complex physical, emotional, and consciousness components. Spiritual practice supports healing, but doesn't replace professional treatment or guarantee specific timelines. Angela continued practicing for 8 more months. Gradually, Catherine began making different choices. She entered treatment, completed the program, and began rebuilding her life. The timeline was longer than Angela hoped, but the outcome was genuine. Joel taught that spiritual practice works with divine timing, not human impatience. Your role is consistent practice, not controlling outcomes or timelines. Perhaps the deepest challenge is practicing impersonalization when you're the one being impersonalized negatively by others. Someone judges you, criticizes you, or treats you unfairly. Can you recognize that their judgment is an impersonal pattern, not the truth about you? Can you maintain awareness of your spiritual identity while they're attacking your human personality? Timothy faced this when colleagues spread false rumors about his professional competence. His reputation suffered, his career advancement stalled. The temptation was to defend himself aggressively or retreat in shame. Instead, Timothy practiced impersonalizing both the colleagues and the rumors themselves, recognizing that false judgment was an impersonal pattern without legitimate power or reality. The practice required months of inner discipline. Timothy addressed the situation appropriately at work while maintaining spiritual recognition that his true identity remained untouched. Eventually, the truth emerged naturally, his reputation restored. But the real victory was Timothy's consciousness remaining stable throughout the crisis through consistent spiritual practice, regardless of external circumstances. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart, like to support this wisdom being shared freely, subscribe for advanced Joel Goldsmith practices denominations didn't want you to know, and comment which obstacle you're ready to transform through impersonalization now. Advanced practitioners learn to impersonalize their own negative patterns. When you catch yourself being judgmental, fearful, or resentful, you can recognize these as impersonal patterns operating through you temporarily. You're not a judgmental person, you're experiencing an impersonal suggestion of judgment. This recognition allows the pattern to dissolve without guilt or self-condemnation weighing you down. William discovered this application after years of practicing impersonalization toward others. He realized he could apply the same principle to his own anger issues. Instead of identifying as an angry person who needed fixing, William recognized anger itself as an impersonal force seeking expression. This shift allowed him to observe anger arising without claiming it as his identity. Over 6 months, William's anger responses diminished dramatically, not through suppression or psychological techniques, but through consistent spiritual recognition that anger was impersonal, temporary, and not his true nature. When anger arose, William impersonalized it the same way he had learned to impersonalize others' negative behaviors toward him. Joel taught that you can impersonalize social and political conflicts. When you read news of violence, corruption, or injustice, you can recognize these as impersonal patterns of belief in separation, fear, and lack operating through collective human consciousness. This doesn't make you passive or uncaring. It makes you spiritually intelligent about the true nature of collective challenges. Emily practiced this during intense political divisions in her community. Instead of demonizing those with opposing views, she recognized that divisiveness itself was an impersonal pattern, seeking expression through everyone, regardless of political affiliation. This recognition didn't change her own convictions, but it freed her from the hatred and fear that poisoned others' experience of community life. Emily participated in community dialogue events, bringing a consciousness of spiritual unity beneath surface disagreements. She didn't convert anyone to her political views, but her presence created space for respectful exchange. Several participants later mentioned that conversations with Emily felt different, more human, less combative. Her impersonalization practice created an atmosphere where others could connect beyond their differences. Advanced impersonalization extends to global challenges. Poverty, disease, war, and environmental destruction appear as massive problems beyond individual influence. But Joel taught that all discord is impersonal, operating at whatever scale human consciousness allows through collective belief and agreement. Your individual practice of recognizing the impersonal nature of these challenges contributes to collective consciousness shift. Nathan worked in international development, confronting poverty and corruption daily. The enormity of suffering overwhelmed him until he began practicing impersonalization. He recognized that poverty consciousness was an impersonal belief in lack and limitation, not the spiritual truth about any community or nation. Corruption was impersonal greed and fear, not the essential nature of any individual leader. This recognition didn't make Nathan naive about systemic challenges or reduce his practical efforts. It gave him spiritual stability to continue the work without despair. His projects became more effective because he approached communities recognizing their spiritual capacity rather than focusing solely on their human limitations. Results improved over several years as Nathan's consciousness influenced the entire organization's approach. The practice ultimately reveals that there's no separation between spiritual and practical life. Impersonalization isn't something you do during meditation and then forget in daily activities. It becomes your natural way of perceiving reality. You automatically see through surface appearances to the spiritual truth underlying all experience. This vision transforms everything without constant effort. Vanessa reached this stage after 3 years of consistent practice. She no longer had to remind herself to impersonalize or recognize. When challenges arose, her consciousness naturally perceived their impersonal nature and spiritual reality simultaneously. Problems still occurred, but they no longer had the same power to disturb her inner stability or overwhelm her peace. Joel called this state of consciousness spiritual maturity. You're not trying to be spiritual or practice techniques. You're living from spiritual consciousness as your natural state. The human experience continues with its challenges and joys, but you're anchored in awareness that transcends and includes the human level. This is the goal of all spiritual practice. Not escape from life, but transformation of consciousness that naturally transforms experience. The forbidden nature of Joel's teaching wasn't about the practice itself, but about the implications. If anyone can access healing power directly through consciousness, what need do they have for institutional intermediaries? If spiritual truth is available through individual recognition, what authority do denominations hold over people's spiritual lives and development? Laura attended a church for years before discovering Joel's teachings. When she shared her experiences with impersonalization and the healing that followed, church leaders warned her against pursuing these practices. They claimed she was falling into dangerous spiritual territory, but Laura recognized their fear wasn't about her safety. It was about losing control over her spiritual authority. Joel faced similar resistance throughout his teaching career. He was asked to leave certain spiritual organizations because his message of individual direct access to divine consciousness threatened hierarchical structures. But Joel persisted because he knew the truth he taught was too valuable to suppress. Thousands experienced genuine transformation through practices that required nothing but willingness and consistency. Today, Joel Goldsmith's teachings continue spreading despite institutional resistance. People discover these practices through books, recordings, online resources, and direct spiritual experience. The forbidden becomes accessible to anyone seeking truth beyond traditional religious frameworks. You don't need permission, credentials, or approval to practice impersonalization and recognition. You need only commitment to consistent application. Matthew discovered Joel's work during a personal crisis when traditional religious approaches failed him. The impersonalization practice seemed radical, even heretical. But Matthew was desperate enough to try it consistently for several months. His crisis resolved, not through miracle intervention, but through gradual consciousness transformation that naturally changed his experience. Now Matthew shares these teachings with others facing similar struggles. Some are receptive, others resist. Matthew doesn't force the information or argue with skeptics. He simply shares what worked in his own experience and lets others decide for themselves. This is Joel's approach. Offer truth, demonstrate through living example, and allow individual choice without manipulation or pressure. The practice requires no special circumstances or abilities. You don't need to be spiritually advanced, highly educated, or free from problems to begin. You start exactly where you are, with whatever challenges you're facing. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice impersonalization and recognition. Each difficulty becomes a classroom for consciousness transformation through consistent application. Christina started practicing while dealing with chronic illness, financial stress, and family conflicts simultaneously. She didn't wait until life improved to begin spiritual practice. She practiced in the midst of challenges, sometimes barely maintaining awareness for a few minutes at a time. But those minutes accumulated into hours, days, weeks of shifted consciousness over time. 2 years later, Christina's circumstances had transformed significantly. Her health stabilized, finances improved, family relationships healed. But the real transformation was Christina's consciousness. She had developed spiritual stability that could weather any storm because she no longer identified with circumstances. She recognized herself as the consciousness that creates and experiences circumstances from spiritual awareness. Joel Goldsmith's forbidden practice remains available to you right now. You don't need to join anything, believe anything specific, or change your current spiritual path. You simply need to begin practicing impersonalization and recognition consistently in your daily life. Start with one challenging person or situation. Practice seeing through the impersonal nature of the problem. Practice recognizing spiritual perfection beneath human appearances. Some days will feel powerful, others will feel like nothing's happening. Continue anyway. Some situations will shift quickly, others will require months of practice. Continue anyway. Your consciousness is transforming even when you don't see immediate evidence. Trust the process, trust the practice. Trust that consciousness creates experience, and changed consciousness naturally produces changed experience. The denominations tried to stop this teaching because they recognized its power to liberate individuals from dependence on external spiritual authority. But truth cannot be stopped. It spreads from consciousness to consciousness, from practice to practice, from transformation to transformation. You are part of that spreading truth right now, reading these words, considering these practices, preparing to transform your own consciousness and experience through Joel's forbidden wisdom. If your spiritual understanding expanded through Joel Goldsmith's forbidden practices, like this video to help others break free from institutional limitations, subscribe for more suppressed mystical Christianity teachings, and comment, "I practice impersonalization," to confirm your commitment to consciousness transformation.
Most people believe prayer is an act of asking, pleading for better circumstances, greater health, more abundance, or peace in the world. Yet the true prayer is not a petition to change outer things, it is the realization of the presence that already is. When we pray with words that reach outward, we affirm that we are separated from the source. But when we turn within in silence, we touch the infinite that has never left us. Prayer is not an effort to reach God, it is the awareness that we were never apart. The mind that prays for something is still declaring lack. To pray rightly is to awaken from that illusion, to see that we already stand in the fullness of divine supply. When the soul is still, when the heart is quiet, when thought ceases its demand, something sacred begins to move. We feel the warmth of an invisible love, not coming from somewhere else, but rising from within us. That presence becomes our prayer, our healing, our answer. So the secret is this: stop talking to God and begin listening with God. There is a vast difference. In true prayer there is no I asking and no thou giving. There is only the one Spirit revealing itself as wholeness, harmony, peace. Every desire that drives us to pray is already the movement of that Spirit seeking to make itself known. We do not fulfill our desires, we awaken to the fact that they were fulfilled before we asked. The right way to pray, then, is through awareness. Sit quietly. Withdraw attention from the outer world. Let the body rest. Let thought dissolve. Do not reach for words. Do not reach for results. Simply rest in the presence that breathes you. It knows what you need before you do. It unfolds every harmony, every solution, every supply through its own rhythm. When the heart no longer seeks to get, but to be, prayer has begun. And in that holy stillness, the impossible becomes natural, the broken becomes whole, and the separate becomes one. Prayer is not the path to God. It is the recognition that you have never left home. True prayer is inner realization, not outer asking. Real prayer is not about pleading for things to change, but awakening to the divine presence that already is. The illusion of separation creates false prayer. When we pray as if God is distant, we affirm lack, yet the source has never been apart from us. Silence is the highest form of prayer. In stillness and quiet awareness, the presence reveals itself as love, peace, and fulfillment without words. Right prayer is listening, not speaking. Stop talking to God. Begin listening with God. There is no I and thou, only one spirit expressing completeness. Prayer is awakening, not attaining. The purpose of prayer is to realize we already dwell in wholeness, that we have never left the infinite home of the Spirit. True prayer is inner realization, not outer asking. It is not the act of shaping words into beautiful requests or crafting thoughts to reach some distant deity. Rather, it is the awakening of awareness to the divine presence that has never departed. Most people begin prayer from a sense of emptiness. They look around their lives, see what seems to be missing, and then try to fill that absence by appealing to a higher power. Yet in doing so, they unknowingly affirm the very condition of lack they wish to escape. To pray in this way is to declare, I do not have, and in that declaration, the consciousness of separation deepens. True prayer begins when that illusion is dissolved, when we no longer speak from want but from knowing. When one understands that prayer is not communication but communion, a sacred stillness arises. It is not a conversation between the human and the divine, it is the recognition that the human and the divine are not two. In the silence between thoughts, something vast and wordless reveals itself. The quiet certainty that everything necessary for harmony, health, abundance, and peace already exists in the invisible realm of spirit. The outer conditions of life, then, are not causes but reflections of the inner awareness. To pray rightly is to return the attention inward until this truth becomes alive, until the presence within begins to radiate outward and transform every appearance of limitation. No true prayer is ever a request. It is a remembrance. It is the gentle turning of the mind toward the light that has always been there, even when clouds of doubt and fear have hidden it. In those moments when we cease striving to be heard, when we lay aside our anxious desires and our rehearsed petitions, something miraculous happens. We become still enough to feel the pulse of divine life moving through us, breathing us, sustaining us. In that realization, words become unnecessary. The very awareness of the presence is the prayer, and the moment we touch that awareness, the answer has already appeared, not necessarily in the form we expected, but as the quiet assurance that all is well. The practice of inner prayer requires courage, for it asks us to give up the comfort of doing. We have been conditioned to believe that effort, words, and emotion are the engines that make prayer work. But in truth, they are the barriers that keep us from hearing the still, small voice within. To be still is to trust that the invisible knows its own way into visibility. It is to let go of personal will and surrender to the divine rhythm already operating in the universe. As long as we seek to change conditions through outer effort, we remain trapped in the circle of cause and effect. When we rest in realization, the circle dissolves and harmony flows without resistance. Consider the difference between one who prays for light and one who opens his eyes to see that the sun is already shining. The first may pray endlessly, believing that with enough words he can make the light appear. The second, in silent awareness, simply turns toward what is, and the darkness vanishes of itself. This is the essence of true prayer. It does not call upon divine favor to descend. It lifts human awareness to perceive the divine that is ever present. It is the awakening of sight, not the summoning of miracles. The one who practices this inner prayer begins to notice subtle transformations. The same world remains, yet it feels different, softer, more luminous, more alive. The anxieties that once seemed so urgent lose their hold, for the realization of divine completeness dissolves fear at its root. Prayer ceases to be an act performed in time and becomes a state of consciousness lived moment by moment. Every breath becomes a prayer, every encounter a revelation, every silence a temple. In that awareness, the heart knows that there is nothing to attain, nothing to change, and nothing to fix. Life is already whole, already sacred, already enough. To live in the spirit of true prayer is to live in gratitude before anything is received, to rest in peace before any condition has shifted, to know abundance before a single coin appears. The outer manifestations may come, and they often do, but they are no longer the goal. They are the natural expression of an inner state that has recognized its source. Once we touch that realization, prayer becomes less about words and more about being. We do not need to reach upward, we only need to look inward and awaken to the divine completeness that has always been the very ground of our being. The illusion of separation creates false prayer. The moment one begins to think of God as somewhere beyond reach, the heart closes itself from the very presence it seeks. The idea of distance between the individual and the divine is the great deception of the human mind, the root of all spiritual confusion and frustration. When you pray to a God who seems to dwell outside of you, in the sky or in some far-off heaven, you are affirming that you are here and God is there. That single belief keeps the door to true communion locked. It turns prayer into a desperate call across an imagined gulf, rather than a quiet resting in the eternal wholeness that already includes you. In this mistaken way of praying, people strive to reach God as though the infinite could be persuaded by words, emotion, or ritual. They believe that the right phrases or the right posture will draw divine attention, yet the divine never turns away. It is human awareness that has turned outward. The universe is not deaf to our longing. It is we who are deaf to its constant whisper. The infinite does not need to be summoned. It is already here, beating in your heart, breathing through your lungs, sustaining your being this very moment. When the mind insists on calling to something beyond, it overlooks the quiet truth that the very act of consciousness is God expressing itself as you. The sense of separation arises from ignorance, not from reality. The ocean does not lose a drop when a wave appears, nor does the wave exist apart from the ocean. So too, no individual exists apart from the divine. You are not reaching for God, you are the expression of God reaching into awareness as you. Every thought, every breath, every heartbeat is a movement of that same infinite life. When you begin to see this, prayer changes completely. It ceases to be a cry for intervention and becomes a recognition of what is. You no longer pray for health because you realize life itself is health. You do not beg for supply because divine completeness lacks nothing. You do not ask for peace because the very essence of your being is peace. Yet this awareness cannot come while one clings to the idea of me and God. The human mind, conditioned by centuries of separation, keeps repeating the story of an absent deity, a power to be convinced, pleased, or moved. Such belief creates a world of duality where the creator and the created stand apart. But in the silence of true prayer, that duality dissolves. There is no longer a subject and object, no longer a seeker and a sought. There is only awareness, boundless, still, complete. When you rest in that awareness, you find that the presence you once sought is the very self that is aware of seeking. To overcome the illusion of separation, one must turn inward, not outward. It is not a journey of miles, but a movement of consciousness. Each time you quiet the mind's noise, you draw closer, not because the divine moves toward you, but because the veil of separation grows thinner. In deep stillness, you begin to sense that your thoughts, your feelings, and your very being arise from a single source. That realization melts the sense of two into the experience of one. In that moment, prayer becomes pure awareness, unspoken and effortless. The false prayer of separation always produces struggle, anxiety, and disappointment because it begins with the belief that something is missing. The true prayer of unity brings peace instantly because it begins with the understanding that nothing can be missing in the infinite. When you pray from unity, there is no need to make anything happen. You are not calling upon a higher power to act. You are resting in the knowing that the power is already acting as your very life. The healing, the abundance, the harmony, they are not things to be achieved but realities to be recognized. When this awareness deepens, life itself becomes prayer. Every act becomes sacred because the veil between spirit and matter has fallen away. You see the divine radiance in every face, every sound, every moment of stillness and motion. The sun rising is a prayer. The laughter of a child is a prayer. The breath moving through your body is a prayer. Nothing is outside of that presence. To live in this understanding is to live in constant communion, where the outer world no longer feels foreign or hostile, but becomes a mirror reflecting divine perfection. Thus, the illusion of separation ends not through striving, but through surrender. Not by calling out to God, but by realizing that God is the very substance of your awareness. When that realization dawns, false prayer falls away like a shadow in the sunlight, and what remains is the quiet, radiant knowing that you and the infinite were never apart. Silence is the highest form of prayer because in silence, the soul stops reaching and begins realizing. In the noise of words, thoughts, and desires, the voice of the spirit cannot be heard. But when the mind becomes still, when the inner motion of seeking subsides, an awareness dawns that needs no language. It is not something that we create or achieve. It is what has always been waiting beneath the surface of our restless minds. Silence is not emptiness. It is fullness, wholeness, presence. It is the space where the finite yields to the infinite, where the personal fades into the impersonal, and the human consciousness opens to the divine. Most people approach prayer with noise. Not only spoken words, but mental noise, worries, expectations, fears, and desires. They think they are communicating with God, but in truth, they are speaking to their own limited understanding. The Spirit does not need to be informed of our needs or persuaded by our words. It is already the answer to every need. The only obstacle that stands between us and that realization is the chatter of the mind. That is why silence is not simply quieting the tongue. It is quieting thought itself. When the inner conversation stops, the presence that has always been speaking can finally be heard. In that sacred stillness, prayer becomes listening instead of asking. There is a profound shift from doing to being. The mind no longer tries to reach out to a distant God. Instead, it rests in awareness and feels the living presence within. This is not a silence of emptiness or void, but one filled with a radiant aliveness that words cannot express. It is a living silence, humming with divine energy, filled with peace and knowing. The body relaxes, the heart softens, and something deep within whispers, "I am here." That whisper is not from another, it is the voice of your own divine essence revealing itself. In silence, we discover that prayer is not communication but communion. There is no duality in that moment, no I, who prays, and no thou, who answers. There is only the awareness of oneness. The waves of thought settle into the still ocean of consciousness, and in that calm, we experience what all true mystics have known, that the presence of God is not something to be found, it is something to be recognized. It was never absent. It only appeared hidden beneath the noise of our thinking. The silence of true prayer is not forced. It cannot be achieved by willpower or discipline alone. It unfolds naturally when the desire to get something from God dissolves. As long as there is wanting, there is disturbance. As long as there is seeking, there is noise. But when one simply sits in awareness, not wanting, not asking, just being, silence blossoms on its own. And within that silence, answers arise without words, healing flows without effort, and peace descends without cause. It is the language of the infinite, spoken in stillness. To live in this silence is to live in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. The world outside may be filled with sound and movement, yet inwardly there remains a deep quietness that nothing can disturb. This silence becomes a sanctuary, not a place of withdrawal, but of strength. From it one acts without strain, speaks without anxiety, gives without depletion. It is not the silence of retreat, but the silence of power, the stillness from which creation itself flows. The greatest prayers of history have not been spoken aloud. They have been felt in the silence of hearts that surrendered completely. It is said that when the Master sits in silence, the disciples are lifted without a word, for that silence carries the vibration of truth. Words can point to truth, but only silence can reveal it. Every scripture, every teaching, every sacred sound is but a doorway leading back to that holy stillness where God and the soul are one. If you truly wish to pray, learn to be silent, not just outwardly, but inwardly. Sit quietly, let the breath soften, and release all effort to think or reach. Allow the thoughts to pass like clouds across the sky. Beneath them, you will sense something unmoving, unchanging, eternal. Stay there. That is prayer. That is communion. That is the presence itself. In that silence, there is no need to ask for healing, for in that awareness, the body remembers its wholeness. There is no need to seek peace, for peace is the very nature of that silence. There is no need to chase abundance, for the silent heart knows it already lives in infinite supply. Every outer need fades before the realization of inner completeness. Silence reveals what words can never reach, that the divine is not somewhere to be found, but everywhere to be felt, waiting in the quiet depths of your own being. Right prayer is listening, not speaking. The truest communion with the divine begins when words end. So long as we are speaking, aloud or within the mind, we are holding the center of our own small self, believing that we must inform, convince, or persuade God to act. But the infinite does not respond to persuasion, nor does it require explanation. It already knows, because it is the very life that beats in our hearts, the intelligence that breathes through all creation. Prayer, then, is not our attempt to reach the divine, it is the divine's attempt to reach us. And that reaching can only be felt when we stop speaking and begin listening. In listening prayer, the movement shifts from outward to inward. Instead of trying to make something happen, we become still enough to feel what is already happening. We cease to struggle for divine attention and awaken to divine awareness. Every sound, every breath, every pulse of life becomes part of that silent conversation. Listening opens the door to revelation, for the Spirit cannot reveal truth to a noisy mind. It speaks in the language of intuition, of feeling, of deep knowing, a language that words can never translate. When one begins to listen with the inner ear, prayer changes from an act to a state of consciousness. It is no longer something we do, it becomes what we are. To listen with God means to listen from the place of oneness, not separation. When the human mind prays to an external power, it remains bound in duality. There is I, the petitioner, and thou, the giver. But true prayer transcends this illusion. In silent listening, there is no longer a me that speaks or a God that answers. There is only awareness itself unfolding. The stillness that arises in such listening is not empty, it is alive with presence, filled with peace, light, and understanding. It is the recognition that the same mind which governs the stars also thinks as you, that the same life that sustains the universe is the life breathing within you. When we learn to listen rather than speak, we move from demand to trust. We stop trying to control the outcome and allow the divine rhythm to reveal itself. Often the answers that arise in listening prayer are not what we expected, because they come from a higher wisdom that sees beyond human reasoning. They are not formed in words or ideas, but as inner clarity, a knowing that dissolves confusion, a peace that quiets fear, a love that heals without instruction. Sometimes no specific answer appears at all, only a deep serenity that whispers, "All is well." That serenity itself is the answer, for it restores our consciousness to harmony, and from harmony, right action flows effortlessly. True listening requires humility, the willingness to surrender the noise of personal will. The ego thrives on speaking, it wants to declare, to demand, to be heard. But the soul thrives on silence, on yielding, on awareness. The shift from speaking to listening is the death of ego's control and the birth of spiritual vision. It is the point where human thought yields to divine intelligence. The mind does not need to direct prayer, it needs only to make room for what is already trying to express itself. When the human ceases, the divine begins to reveal. To listen with God is to rest in an intimacy beyond words. Imagine sitting beside a calm sea at dawn, no speech, no request. Only the awareness of vastness, of beauty, of life moving in perfect order. That stillness is prayer. You are not doing anything to create it. You are simply attuned to what is. The same silence that lies beneath the waves of the ocean lies within your own being. In listening, you begin to feel that the divine is not separate, not distant, but the very essence of awareness itself. You are not waiting for a voice from above. You are hearing the eternal voice that has always spoken beneath every breath. The power of this listening prayer is that it transforms not just moments of devotion, but the entire fabric of daily life. You begin to carry that quiet awareness with you everywhere. In work, in conversation, in rest. Every situation becomes a place to listen. Instead of reacting with fear or resistance, you pause and listen inwardly. And from that listening, wisdom flows. You discover that guidance does not come as sudden miracles, but as the quiet unfolding of intuition that always knows the next right step. The more deeply you listen, the less you speak, and the less you speak, the more you know. Eventually, prayer ceases to be a practice and becomes a state of being. Every breath is prayer, every silence is communion, every moment is revelation. Listening turns your entire life into a sacred dialogue, not between you and another, but within the one. And in that divine stillness, you realize that the voice you hear is not answering you from afar, it is your own deepest self speaking from eternity. Prayer is awakening, not attaining. The world teaches us to strive, to reach, to achieve, to climb toward what we believe we lack. But the spiritual life begins when that striving ceases, when we realize that the kingdom we seek is already within. The purpose of prayer is not to gain something new, but to open the eyes of consciousness to what eternally is. In truth, there is nothing to attain, because all that we could ever desire, peace, love, abundance, wisdom, and health, already exists in the infinite completeness of divine being. Our task is not to bring it into existence, but to awaken to its presence. Every form of seeking is built on the assumption that something is missing. The moment we begin to pray for something, we silently affirm lack. We say, "I do not have," and thus reinforce the veil of separation. Awakening prayer begins with the understanding that nothing real can ever be missing from the wholeness of God. To awaken is to look through the illusion of absence and recognize that divine fullness is already here. This is why true prayer is never an act of acquiring but of remembering. It is the movement from blindness to sight, from forgetfulness to awareness, from dreaming to waking in the eternal now. When we awaken through prayer, we begin to see that life has never been divided between the sacred and the ordinary. Every moment, every breath, every act is a revelation of the same divine essence. The beauty of a sunrise, the warmth of a hand, the rhythm of the heart. All of these whisper the same truth: the infinite is here. What we sought through outer forms was never outside. It was only our perception that was asleep. The clouds of fear, desire, and doubt obscure the inner sun, yet the sun has never stopped shining. The prayer of awakening clears those clouds not by effort, but by surrender. To awaken is to rest in awareness. It is the still recognition that there is nothing to chase and nothing to fix. In that stillness, we cease projecting our own limitations upon the divine. We stop asking for proof, for blessings, for signs, and instead open ourselves to the quiet knowing that everything unfolds through divine order. Life begins to reveal itself as perfectly whole, perfectly timed. The events of our days, once seen as random or unjust, are now recognized as expressions of a higher wisdom, guiding all things toward harmony. The prayer of attainment always looks to the future. Someday I will be healed. Someday I will be at peace. The prayer of awakening lives in the eternal present, where all healing, all peace already exist. The mind that prays for future good blinds itself to the good that is now. Awakening reverses that illusion. It turns the gaze inward, where the presence is eternally complete. When you awaken to that presence, desire dissolves, because fulfillment is no longer a goal. It is your nature. You realize that you are not a seeker of light, but the light itself, momentarily unaware of its own brilliance. The practice of awakening through prayer is not about technique or repetition, it is about awareness. Sit quietly, without motive or expectation. Do not ask, do not plan, do not imagine. Simply become aware, aware of your breath, aware of the stillness beneath thought, aware of the presence that watches silently. That presence is not separate from you, it is you, the eternal self behind all motion and change. As you rest in that awareness, something profound occurs. The layers of resistance fall away, the noise of fear subsides, and in their place arises a peace that is not earned but remembered. When this awakening deepens, even the concept of prayer fades. Life itself becomes prayer, not the act of speaking to God, but the state of being one with God. You no longer need to ask for guidance, for you are guided by the quiet intuition of the Spirit within. You do not pray for abundance, for you live in the awareness that supply flows endlessly through you as divine expression. You do not seek love, for love radiates from your being effortlessly. Every breath becomes a silent affirmation of wholeness. every step a movement in harmony with the infinite. Awakening prayer frees us from the endless cycle of wanting and waiting. It teaches that nothing external can complete us, and nothing within can be lost. The very moment you stop striving to reach the divine, you find that the divine has always been your own awareness, your own being. That realization is the culmination of all prayer, not an attainment of something new, but the awakening to what has always been true. And in that realization, the soul rests, not in expectation, but in peace beyond all words. When the soul awakens to the truth that prayer is not asking but realizing, not reaching but remembering, the search itself comes to rest. In that sacred stillness, we discover that there has never been distance between ourselves and the divine. The presence we sought has been breathing through us all along, living as us, guiding every step, even when we thought we walked alone. True prayer is not about changing the outer world. It is about transforming the inner vision that sees the world. When the heart becomes silent and the mind is still, the Eternal speaks without sound. It whispers through peace, through love, through quiet knowing. It does not promise what will be, it reveals what already is. And when we behold that presence within, our prayers are no longer requests but expressions of gratitude, not for what will come, but for what is now. So let your prayer be this: not words, not wishes, but awareness. Be still and know that the fullness of life, the wholeness of God, the peace of the Spirit, are already here, waiting only for you to awaken and see.